Hello, I'm Tim Lindquist, and this is SER 321, Principles of Distributed Software Systems. Today I want to talk about, if you look at the detailed schedule, it's Unit 8, which is using FLTK. And this video should be useful, I hope, after getting started on the lab exercise from Unit 7. That lab exercise asks you to implement in C++ a client and a server which use JSON remote procedure call to communicate with each other. And the most straightforward way to implement that is to start with the server, implement it, use the calculator, JSON RPC example as a basis for it, and you might also use the group JSON example as well. Both of those are referenced from that assignment page. Implement a command line client that communicates with the server to get information from the server to make sure you've got that part working. And then once you get that far, then it's time to view this video and to start working with FLTK for C++, which is the Fastlight Toolkit. So this unit, there's actually a reference to an FLTK tutorial. It's actually a very good tutorial. It's resident on the POO site, but I also show you the download site where the tutorial came from as another link. And in particular, in this tutorial, you might want to pay attention to the sections on input-output boxes, the budget widget. Actually, there's some stuff in the introduction and FLTK structure that's useful as well. And then I think it's down here at the very end, close to it anyway, the tree widget. We'll be using the tree widget to display media, which are information to populate the tree comes from the RPC, JSON RPC server. So that's one reference on this section. The next reference actually is FLTK documentation, and this documentation is the complete user's manual for FLTK together with the class reference documentation. And let's just show you that. This is available both on the detailed schedule page and also on the assignment page. Both of those are on both the POO site and also on the Blackboard site. This is the manual that you see in the right panel here. And then if you go to the classes list down a ways, you can actually find class documentation for each of the different classes. So here's FLTK input. And FLTK input provides you the ability to to provide a widget for users to input information into your application. And then again, down toward the bottom is FL_tree, the class documentation for the tree. And we're going to be looking at both of those. So in particular, we're going to, in this video, we're going to do both the GUI demo.jar and the media player. The GUI demo is very close to what you'll need for assignment number 5 for the C++ client, but the exact code for the C++ client is in the media player application. But I thought I'd show you two different versions. So let's go ahead and download these. So I'm running on the Debian Linux box, and I'll put these into the FLTK within my SER 321 examples FLTK directory. Let's just download both of them while we're here. And now if I switch back over to the LX terminal, You can see both of those files ended up in my folder. So let's look at the GUI demo one first. So when you first extract it, you'll see that there's a build.xml. Within the lib directory is the ant libs, in case you haven't installed those on your system, so that the CPP tasks will work. There's a readme.txt file that shows how to execute and how to build and execute both the Java example and the C++ example. The C++ example consists of the media client and media client GUI. These files are the same name as in the next example we're to look at. It would use the files in the next example as the basis for your solution instead of these. Since these don't have all the controls that you need, it's intended to be a more minimized example that you can use. I would definitely recommend that you read through both of them, because there's a little bit of difference in the way that the controller is structured in both of them. And then just, we're not going to do it today or in this video, but on the Java side, there is a browser. This is to demonstrate swing, and we'll be talking about this in the next unit, unit number 9, where we look at swing media playback with Java FX. So let's go ahead. If you do ant, we'll build this. And actually, that's not right. When you do ant, it indicates that you execute it by bin click me. The readme.txt file is actually accurate. So let's go ahead and ant build.cpp. And now if you look in the bin directory, you'll find a media client. And if you execute it, no command line arguments are necessary. I don't know how well this will show up on the video, but this is actually fairly close to the client that you should use for your solution to assignment 5. Again, make sure that you develop assignment 5 working from the command line first, and then get into the FLTK controller. And so we have in the left panel a tree, and notice that when we do selections in the tree, we get some output from the command line that indicates what has been selected. And then there's also a button and an input to show you how to handle those. So the idea behind the input, the text field at the very top of the right panel is an input, FL_input control, and it allows you to enter data. So let's enter my name. And then when we click the button, click me, it puts into an output area. I'm not sure if there's an output or an input as well, probably an output. Hello, Tim Lindquist. So it takes the information entered in the input control at the very top of the panel and adds a little message to it, and then puts it into the output area. And then there's the other component is a combo box. And I wanted to have a simple program that shows you these are the basic controls that you need in order to do the media library client. You're more than welcome to use my media library client. The source code for that is included in the next one we'll take a look at, which is the media player. But in fact, this shows you the controls that will probably be the basis for what you'd want to do for your media client. So the other thing that's there are the menu items. And if you select one of the menu items, there's no logic that underline that gets executed. It's just a handler that prints out an appropriate message. So it indicates you selected the menu path file save, and the media type is video to show you how to get information out of this drop down. So if I switch it to music and then I select media play, it won't play anything, but in fact it says that you handle the selected media as music and the selected menu path is media play, just to echo out to the command line that in fact a handler was called appropriately and it did do something. So let's take a look at the code. All right. So the idea behind a user interface, we'll talk about this a little bit more next time as well. We use model view control. So the view is what you see, right? So it is a set of all objects that make up the user interface. In an object-oriented language, C++, FLTK is an object-oriented toolkit. There are different classes. So when we create an instance of a tree class and place it in our palette or in our window, then in fact it's going to show up on the user interface. So that's part of the view. But on the other hand, with any view, whenever there's an action that takes place, so you can see the action that just took place there was to open a tree node, and you can see that it caused a tree callback. So when the user takes actions with the user interface, a method is called in my controller, a different class than the view class. A method is called in my controller class, which is to handle that user action. So if I select Marge, then in fact a method is called in the controller and it does something. Right? So this is the basis for what you want to do with the media library application as well. So now let's take a look at the code. We'll leave this thing up here and running. And this is in the GUI demo project, source C++, and there's two different files. The controller is called the media client, and the view is called the media client GUI. So let's look at the GUI first. It's the view. And you can see that there are several different FL widgets. And you can see the format here of including one of those widgets so that you can use it within your GUI view. So there's a window, a button, an output, a tree item. Those are the things obviously that get put into a tree. A menu bar, a choice, that's the drop down, the text display, and a text buffer. So let's go down and so now we are defining a class called Media Client GUI. It's a it extends FL underscore window, so we want our GUI to be a window in FL. And we're going to define some protected fields. Those protected, we're defining them protected, the exact same use as is done in Java, to allow the controller class to access them. So when the controller wants to add something to the tree, they in fact have access to this tree field, which is the underlying tree. So input, this is the name field. All right, so let me just point to these things. So tree is everything you see in the left panel, the tree. FL input a name is the top input field. The button is the clicked button, which is labeled as click me. And then there's so forth. So when we get down to the constructor, so each of those are accessible from the controller, which is the media client. So now when we get down to the actual constructor, we're going to build the GUI. And FLTK is very straightforward. We call the parent constructor, we tell it how big we want to be. So this is X 400 and Y 350. So we'll go across 400 pixels and it'll go down 350 pixels. And then the third argument here is the name. And that is the name that exists in the as the title bar of this window. So SER 321 full tick example actually got passed in with the name argument to the constructor. We'll see that down below in the main method. And then we say begin. So this is an FLTK window method that says, okay, I'm going to start constructing FLTK components, GUI components, that are going to end up in my window. So the first thing is a menu bar, and I add to the menu bar essentially a path, the first element in the path, file. So it says there's going to be a file menu, and one of the items in the file menu will be the save menu item. All right, File, Restore. All right, and File, Tree Refresh, and so forth. And so you can see all of the different menu items: save, restore, tree refresh, and exit, as well as media, add, remove, and play, are all defined and created here. And I show you a comment here that shows you that, in fact, if you want, you can actually define with a different constructor, with an overload of the add, more information about the menu item that's being added. And in this particular case, this is probably based upon an example I got from an FLTK example, in which we wanted to provide the name of a method to be used as the callback when the restore menu item is selected. We would call, or the FLTK will cause the method menu underscore CB to be called, and it'll pass to it a pointer to this, meaning the object that is the window object, or in this case, it's the media client GUI object, which is a window. Okay, so that takes care of creating the menu bars, and next down here are the tree. So we're defining the tree to be located within our window at X10, which is saying that the space between, I don't know if you can see the cursor, the space between the left vertical boundary of the window and the beginning of the tree component is to be 10 pixels and 35 down. All right, so 35 down from probably the menu, probably here, the beginning of the menu bar, is the top left corner of the tree control. So I'm kind of pointing to that with the arrow now, with the mouse. And it's to be 150 wide, and its height is the height of the window less 45, and its height is the height of the window less 45, which is going to provide me with a 10 pixel buffer down here at the bottom. All right, the height of the window less 45, well, I've already indexed down 35Y. All right, so this kind of defines where that tree control is going to exist within my window. So this form is typically called absolute layout, a form of absolute layout in which we specify the exact size of a control and where it's supposed to reside within the window, is one of the approaches to being able to manage components and their layout. There are several different other approaches. Swing, we'll see in Swing it takes a different approach, or we're going to use a different approach. And in fact, if you go into mobile computing, you'll see that in fact there are several different approaches that are used. Android uses a set of different layout managers, and then iOS, Apple uses a different approach as well, more of an absolute approach more commonly. So once we've defined where the tree is located and its size, 150 by the height of the window, which we specified up above, less 45, we're going to start adding components to the tree. So we're going to add Flintstones Fred, Flintstones Wilma, Flintstones Pebbles, and then we're going to add another subtree, Simpsons, Homer, Marge, Bart, and Lisa. And then initially we're going to close the Simpsons subtree. So I don't know if you noticed or not, but when it came up, or you can start it up again if you want, Simpsons is closed and Flintstones is open. So there, Simpsons is closed again. And now we're going to add an input, which is 175 and 35. So this is the name input. A name is a new FL input. 175/35 is its location. 200 wide and 25 deep. Same thing with a button, so we place it in the thing. So so you can see that we do the complete layout for our thing. I guess there's no sense in going a lot further. It's pretty straightforward. Then we do an end that corresponds with the begin, which says now we're done placing all the components in this window, and then we tell the window to show itself. All right, so that's the constructor for this Media Client GUI. So now let's take a look at the controller. Again, that's the view, and the Media Client.cpp is the controller for it. So notice that it includes Media Client GUI. It also has to include the different controls that it's going to be accessing as the protected fields that are defined in the GUI. And then let me get down to the class header. So my controller in this approach is a class that extends the GUI class. And we're going to, in the controller, set things up so that, in fact, when actions are performed in the GUI, user actions are performed on the GUI, it's going to cause callbacks to methods in this class, in the Media Client class, and it will control those actions, providing the business logic that's necessary in order to implement them. So now you'll notice within this class there are these static methods. Static void clicked X, static void clicked say hello. So clicked X is the exit, which is up here in the upper right hand corner, which is to close it. And you'll see the wire up for those down here pretty soon. So these are the methods that are the handlers for different actions that can take place. Tree callback, and so forth. And then menu clicked. I end all of these. I guess I don't, not with all of them. Some of them I end with an S, which stands for static, because I want to have. You'll see in the controller that I create instance. Notice these are static, which means they're class methods as opposed to instance methods. And there's something about that. So here is the constructor and the main method. That's probably where we should start. So Media Client MC SER321 FLTK example. So that's the name that actually ends up as the title of my window. And then return FL::run. And that causes the window application to start up, and then after the constructor gets called, it actually shows the GUI itself. So the constructor Media Client gets called, and that's this guy right here, and it sets up the wire ups, or called wire ups. So when clicked X, the callback for the window when it gets clicked is clicked X. My static method clicked X. So that is actually going back to the base class for window. And there is a callback method there that gives the callback for when the window X to close the window is clicked. So it'll call my static method clicked X, which is actually up above. Tree arrow callback. So this is going to be the callback for tree actions or tree events, is the tree callback method. And I choose to send it a reference to this object. Why do I need to send it a reference to this object? Because this object, its parents, have the controls. Its parent has the controls, meaning the button and the input and the place to put the output, and the tree as well. So this is the interesting thing about, or the unique thing, I guess is the right way to put it, about FLTK. A callback has to be a static method. Static methods cannot, just like a constructor, cannot access an instance. In this particular case, it can't access the instance of the Media Client unless we pass it a reference to it. So we'll take a look at and reading one of those methods in just a minute. So clicked is the click me button, and its callback is clicked say hello. Well, it's not actually say hello, it should be click me. But the name of the method above is clicked say hello. And then menu bar's callback is menu clicked static. All right, so what's these 1, 2, 3, 4 different statements are providing a hookup or a link up between the underlying view and methods in a media client that are to be called when the user takes different actions. So if the user takes a tree expand or tree contract action, then in fact it's going to call tree callback, the tree callback method. And if the user clicks the click me button, then it's going to click, the window is going to call, or in this case, it's actually the button is going to call the click to say hello method. And when the user makes a menu item selection, either a media or a file menu item selection, it will cause the method menu clicked S to be called. And in each case, the callback, except for the clicked X, the callback gets a reference to this object so that it can access things within the GUI that it needs to access. So let's just take, we're not going to read the full details of all of these. We're going to go on and do the next example as well. So tree callback, void tree callback, it gets the user data. And that user data is this that was passed down below, or shown actually down below. And what it does is take that user data and it casts it to be a media client object. So now I have an instance of a media client that I can use within my method in order to access GUI components within the window. So in fact, FLTreeW, the widget that caused the event, is passed in as W. So I make that, I change it from a widget. Actually, a widget is FLTree inherits or extends widget class. So I know that this widget is a tree because it's a tree callback. So I can coerce it to be a tree. This is not the same tree that's defined. Well, actually, it is the same tree, but it's a different tree variable than defined in the GUI component. And now I'm going to do a switch statement. Sorry, the indentation of this got messed up somehow, but that's the way it works. Based upon the different reasons that are defined for a tree event to occur. So I may get a callback to this method if the tree if there was a selection, or if one of the trees were opened, or one of the trees subtrees were closed or deselected. The reason I have some events commented out here is that depending upon which version of FLTK you have, they introduced in a newer version than ended up getting loaded on my Debian Linux. They have some new constants defined, FLTree reason reselected and FLTree reason dragged, that are not recognized by 1.3 FLTK 1.3.0. So you can see this is just providing action that's associated with a tree click. And I'll let you go ahead and read that and take a look at it. So now let's go ahead and exit this one. Let's quickly run the other one. And I'm going to leave you to read the other example. So, or at least most of it anyway. So let's jar XF media player web. And when you first extract this project, this one actually is a little bit big. There are two freely available media clips in this project. So we can demonstrate both in Java and in C++ playback. So the Java is using FX and the C++ uses, it turns out that Debian Wheezy, the standard installation CD includes media playback with an open source application called VLC. Maybe you heard of it, maybe you haven't. So there is a readme.txt file that shows you how to execute these. Within the doc directory are a set of documentations that are generated by Doxygen um, for the GUIs, each of the different GUI classes, a Java GUI class and a C++ GUI class. So if I do ll source C++, you see they're the exact same name files or classes, but they're different classes, different content. And if I do the same thing for Java, you can see that there is a controller subclass, and that controller subclass has the controller. So the view class for Java, we'll talk about this in the next unit. The view class for Java is not given to you in source code. It's actually in a jar file in the lib directory that we'll take a look at next time. If you do ant, you'll see this in the readme.txt file. There is an ant build.cpp. So again, we're compiling media and media client, linking it, and it completed. So now in the bin directory, I have sample media client /bin sample media client. And this is a GUI and a template for the controller that you can use for your, oh, there's missing a component. You'll have to add a component, which is the file name. That you can use for your solution to assignment number 5, and actually you don't need it in assignment number 6. So I built a sample based upon the initial is the JSON file from assignment, what was it, 3, where you were asked to do initializing your media library, non-distributed media library from a JSON file. So these are the same media clips that were described there. And on the right-hand side, we actually have some different input controls. You're actually going to have to add another one down here because your media description is defined to also have a file name, and that's not given here. So when you do a selection, you can see that very similar to the example we just looked at, there's a reason for the callback, and the tree gets called back. And then here's a choice, either music or video. The other thing about this example is that it shows you playback, and I'll just demonstrate that. Let's see if we can get it to work. So now when you do the play, it's different than the way that it is with the Java version, but in this version it creates it invokes this program called VLC, and VLC plays whatever media it is that you pass to it in the command line. And some reason or another, the first time when it actually has to check, it doesn't seem to work correctly. Not sure why, but let's go ahead and quit it. So media playback isn't actually a required thing for this one. I don't know what's going on with this. Let's, for the fun of it, do it again. I'm a glutton for punishment. So I'm actually using a different MacBook for this video recording, and it may be a problem with it. I'm not sure. It's kind of interesting. Actually works on the other MacBook, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we can get it to work. Maybe we can't. Definitely found the file. So I'm actually going to restart the client. So there's the music. You can probably hear it in the background. For some reason or other, VLC, the first time it comes up on a when it's called through a program under program control. So your selection and the choice here determines whether or not it plays the MP4 or the MP3 file that is in the project. So let's try the video one more time just for the fun of it. Yeah. So maybe I should just leave it out there. Well, whatever. As I said, it works fine on the other MacBook, and I don't know whether it's going to work on yours or not, but as I said, it's not. This is just kind of an add-on for the fun of it to show you. Actually, so what happens in here is a thread gets created, and that thread is responsible for, it's synchronized with VLC. So it will not, so the client won't quit until VLC is quit. So as you can see, neither VLC nor the client have stopped yet. So if I go back to the command line and X them out, so I'm typing a Control C from the command line, and that cancels both of them. It does both of them. So I'm going to try this just one more time, and then we're going to quit. I can be obstinate. So we know the music works. If the music works, the video ought to work as well. And this time I'm just going to leave it at full size. So maybe that's what's screwing it up. I don't know. Or maybe it's just taking a bunch of time to load it. So this is why we're using Java FX for the Java one. Media playback is not an important part of it. Actually, for either one of them, but it's since we're doing downloading with the Java in assignment 6, then actually it is kind of important to have it doing that way. So we're going to end up having to Control C out of this again. Vout display error, no available X video adapter. Okay, that could be what's going on. As I said, it works fine on my other client. I don't know whether it'll work on yours or not, but actually the only real problem that you'll have is if the Java FX doesn't work, and then we'll have to have a talk a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Actually, no, just for the fun of it. And so just to introduce, the next video is going to be MVC and swing. So let's just see if it works on this machine, just for the fun of it. I'll know to use the other one for the next video. And build.java. And it's Java-CP classes :lib, and this is media GUI.jar, ser321.media. I think it's sample media library. We'll find out. Nope. It is sample media app. Sample media client. Sorry, actually I can probably fix this before you see the video. So the build.xml that you get will be accurate. So this is the Java client, and it uses JavaFX, so you need to have been successful in getting JavaFX loaded on your Debian Wheezy. And the area here is for showing video. So music, again, it's the same thing. You can do selections, and when you do media play, let's do music first because that worked before. Should be the same song. The controls are provided here. Actually, I'm using a class that's on an example page from Oracle. And now when we select video, play the video, let's see if we get Machu Picchu. Now this one actually works, so that's interesting, JavaFX. So this is a time lapse that somebody took of Machu Picchu over I don't know how many hours, but it's only about a 15-second video clip, and that one works. So I don't know what's going on with VLC and the C++. It works, as I said, it works on the other laptop. So this thing keeps replaying it over and over again. So there, it just went back to the beginning. Now, obviously, since these are openly, freely available, both media, video, and music, it's fine for you to use them. I don't know if I actually included a reference of where I got them, but that's not important. They're openly distributable. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. So what we have done is to look at Unit 8 FLTK. Well, you know what? Actually, there's one more thing before we quit. In the media, media player, source C++ media client.cpp. The media client GUI has a different set of controls, but I wanted to show you a different organization here for the methods. I mentioned earlier in this video that in fact there's a requirement that methods be static to be callbacks. So in this one I show some example of actually having the static method call a corresponding instance method. So here's an example for the tree back, for the tree callback. The static method gets called. It gets past the widget, which in this case is a tree widget, and it also gets past the data. And remember, the constructor for it passed this as the data, indicated that it should send a reference to the media client object. So what I do is coerce in the static, coerce that into a media client object, a pointer to a media client object, and then call the media client object's tree callback method, the non-static method. All right, so there's this extra step that exists, but then within the tree callback, you know, what I showed you last time was an idiom where I did this conversion and then I referenced everything. I actually have to reference each of the different controls using O or using that pointer. Instead, just call a method, and then the method is an extension. A method or is an instance method of an object that extends the GUI. So it has access to each of the different controls within the GUI. So I think, yeah, so here the tree that's being accessed is not a local tree item. It's actually the tree in the GUI. So tree callback reason is going to that protected tree. And it doesn't do anything else. I thought it was putting it into one of the other controls. But you'll see this idiom is used throughout this particular client controller. And I recommend that you use not only the media client GUI from this example, but also this media client controller for your solution to assignment number 5, the C++ solution to assignment number 5. Other than that, I think these are very similar. Obviously, there's different controls that are in there. I'll leave it to you to add a file name input into the GUI in the GUI class, and then add it as a protected element so that in fact you can access it from your controller. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for today. The next video will be on swing, and we'll take a look at FX in a little bit more detail, and also some references on MVC so that you understand it a little bit better.